republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, everybody has an agenda in front of them. Is there any additions to the agenda or corrections? We'll move on. Next line item is approve the minutes of the regular meeting held on September 13th and the work session on September 13th and work session held on September 19th.
I move the minutes as presented.
I'll second.
Motion on the floor by Craig and seconded by John to approve the minutes as presented. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Well, let's bring that to a vote. He's trying to hurry, Jay. Those minutes passed, noting 2 absentees. Next thing on the agenda is we have a public hearing tonight on the sidewalk assessments. We'll open a public hearing, and anybody that has any comments on that needs to come forward to the lectern. There's and state your name. And there's also a slip of paper up there to sign if you want to be registered. And how that works, I'm going to let Dennis explain that to our city attorney. Dennis?
Thank you, Mr. Doom. If you want to object, protest your special assessment, we need to receive a written statement from you. I, your name, your property, hereby object. And that preserves your right to challenge what the city has assessed against your property for this project. We'll need a written, and it's that simple, I hereby object. And sign that, and then turn that in to me. That will preserve your rights. But I think we should go to Glenn Olson, city engineer, to explain the process that has been used to determine those figures.
Okay.
Glenn?
Thank you. You've got on the screen there the area that was involved with the assessment project. It's essentially from the downtown at First Street out to the Hy-Vee area, on both sides of East Main Street. And sidewalk replacements are done similar to what all street improvements are done, where the improvements are made and 50% of the cost of the sidewalks are assessed to the property owners, and 100% of the driveway removal and replacements are also assessed to the property owners. In this case, I'll go through a brief summary of how that's done. We did bid the project. It's a special assessment project, so we go through and call for bids, receive bids. We recommend the low responsible bidder, and those are the prices that we use for the assessment process and the amount that's done. Many of the properties along that project area had already made improvements to their sidewalk, removed and replaced them some time ago. And if in fact any of the sections we thought were in good shape, we certainly wouldn't remove and replace them. And we only assessed the amounts that were removed and replaced to the adjacent property owner, 50% of the cost. So what it came down to in the end was about 55% of the project was special assessed, and about 45% of the project was city expenses. And the reason that the property owners have a little more than half is because many of them included driveways, which are 100% accessible. And when we give notice, we say always that the maximum assessment wouldn't exceed $5,500 plus any assessments for the driveways. So we have a listing for you that you've got for each property And we did have some questions, and I'd like to at least address a couple of the questions that have come up since the letters were sent out. The first one was a question concerning what properties were assessed at 105, 107, 109, and 111 East Main Street, and that's on the, I'll call it on the northeast side of East Main Street. And what happened there is that the addressing on our maps was incorrect, and one of the property owners brought that to our attention, that the addressing was incorrect, and we needed to revise the assessment statement sent out to 6 of the properties, the 3 that had too much and 3 that had too little. So we did that, and we notified the property owners of those changes, and it just brought the properties in right with relationship to their real addressing. So that was a correction that was made since the original assessment letters were sent out. Another question came up concerning the cost of the sidewalk replacement, and it seemed fairly high to the property owner that came in for the amount, because a few years ago they had gotten an estimate done to replace it that was significantly lower than this. So after I met with the person, I did go back to check to see what the going prices of sidewalk remove and replace were. And what I found out was that the sidewalk permits that we have and approximately the same amount of sidewalk replacement was actually higher than what this charge was. I'll give you an example. In the one that we looked at, it was about 330 square feet of sidewalk remove and replace, and that in the assessment was $1,855.01, but let's say $1,855. In the sidewalk permits, and that's where you get a $500 reduction due to the city's participation of half of it up to $500. We had 3 of them, one for 320 square feet for $1,975, one of 505 square feet for $2,800, and one for 375 square feet for $2,250. So that's the amount that each of those property owners paid for their sidewalk replacement on their own. And like I did mention, it sounds like a lot when you're our bid price itself was $5.05 a square feet, and the removals was $1.35, so that's $6.40 per square foot just for the sidewalk remove and replace. Many people had their driveways done as well, and it's the cost of doing business. We take the low responsible bidder, so we think that we have as competitive a price for doing the work as possible. And then in the assessment process, you get kind of an added, I won't say benefit, but you're able to pay that over time, 8 years, up to 8 years, at 3.31% interest. So some people can pay cash, but we understand that a lot of people can't. It's one of those things where it's what we consider a fairly reasonable rate to get improvements done on public right-of-way that people are assessed for. So the additional costs that we call add-ons include all the project costs, inspections, special assessments, and financing for putting it on special assessments. And you can then get away from any interest at all by paying for it up front, and I know that that's not available to everyone. If there's any specific questions on any specific property, I think the council has got copies of the assessment roll with each with each one listed. But you can see they vary significantly because of the fact that we did break it out to every single property and every square foot adjacent to each property, rather than a square foot cost for the whole district, or a per lineal foot cost and divide up by your frontage. If you got work, you got a proposed assessment. If you didn't have any work, there was no assessment. Any questions on the process? We have a special assessment policy that this process followed exactly. It's a little more complicated too. I'll give you the whole scoop. For the sidewalk remove and replace, that's 4-inch. It's 4 inches thick generally. Through the driveways, it's 6 inches thick. And we've determined that the property owner shouldn't have to pay for 100% of the concrete going through the driveway, because 2/3 of it is sidewalk. So we actually separate out the 2/3 of it and split that in half, and then the city and the property owner pays for the additional 2 inches themselves, and the city participates in the sidewalk going through the driveway at the same rate as it would be if it was 4-inch sidewalk. So there is some credit if you call it a driveway and there's a sidewalk running through it. There is credit for the 4-inch going through there. We do try to be as lenient as possible for calculating out the cost to the property owner. If there's any other questions, I'd certainly address them.
Does the council have any questions for Glenn?
I think just there's one other, there's an 8-inch category. I'm assuming that's where truck traffic or something would go through. Is that, that's about, and was that following the same thing? City covered portion of the sidewalk, which would be the first 4 inches, but the remaining 4 then would be the landowner.
That's right. And I believe that one is probably the one going into the Coke plant. And yes, we do the same thing there. 4 inches through, 50-50. The additional 4 inches, 100% them.
Any further questions from the council for Glenn? Anyone from the audience care to speak? Would you want to come forward, please? Sign in.
We'll mark these down.
My name is Butch Dow, really Clifford, but I go by Butch. I have a question about 113 Eastbound. I got the estimate 441 change. The check is all written. Now you're trying to tell me that it's 3 times that? Is there a reason for it?
Yes, that was one of those ones that were given to the wrong address to start with, and his new square footage was 203 square feet. I don't have his original one. Maybe I do. Yes, I do.
Almonds next to me, 115, and there was only 4 marked with those arrows going one way and the arrow going the other way of what was going to be replaced. I came back and there was 10 complete sections stacked up on my approach, on my driveway, stacked up 10 high, where they picked the whole thing up with a forklift and took them out. There was sections that there was nothing wrong with, including on Jen's. She had 1, and it was painted and marked the way it was going to be, but when they came and did it, that isn't what happened. They took 11 of them out in front of my house, and there was nothing wrong with it.
I do have the plans that show how much was removed and replaced, both for marking and for removal. So I could go over that with him up at the office to show him what it was. Now, I will say, if they had original marks and then the marks changed or more was taken out, it could have been because of ADA slopes or backfall or something like that. But we do have the original markings.
I came home
the
from
final.
service in 1969, and they redid those sidewalks then, and there was nothing wrong with them all the way through.
Yeah,
I-
so that would be 42 years ago or 43 years ago. Or,
Yeah.
But what I can tell you is that we could go together and get together at the office and show
Okay.
what the original ones showed for removals.
Okay.
And it looks like it's about 40 feet wide, 40 feet of length that was removed. And
I counted them, there was, they're a little over 5 feet sections.
sections.
And I counted them, there was 11. I was like,
Okay, and 8 of them probably would have been yours, and then 3 would be the neighbors.
Okay.
Because I think yours was like 8 sections. And we could go take a look.
I will.
With you. And
Okay.
And we will work with them and see
What you need to
what it should be. Yep,
Here?
yep.
Oh, you got one. Should I use my real name or Butch? It's okay.
Whatever you like is fine.
Thank you.
Genevieve, were you going to, do you want to sign or do you want to make some statements? Did you have anything to add to what Butch said, or you just want to sign the roster?
Well, I want to find out, well, I have 3 sections moved. I know one because a tree was cut around it, but any other than that, my whole side looks done perfect. But they took like 2 extra ones.
They had like
And it's-
15 feet, and sometimes,
But why?
sometimes if there's a transition between ones that are all cracked up and you put those at a different elevation, then the other 2 have to be removed. But hers would have been about
Just
5,
one had to be done.
about 15 feet. 3 sections. So I
Okay.
think that adds up then, if you had
Okay,
8
but then
and 3
my
others.
sidewalk going up to the house,
Right,
they replaced that too.
right.
Why?
And you wouldn't have gotten assessed for that, I don't believe.
Oh, well,
Okay, because if that would have been a transition to the new elevations, we paid for the transitions. Okay, but it'd be good to look at that with you to make sure that you got what you got.
Okay, and then Glenn, you'll follow up with both Butch and Genevieve?
Yes,
Right.
sure.
Okay.
Because I only needed one done. And if you said there was slope, I still got water that sloped there, so they didn't correct that.
Okay.
And I probably didn't have it before.
Just stop and we'll take a look at what it shows. Yeah.
Anyone else have anything to add? Jane? What's your address, Jane?
414 East Main Street,
414.
Jane Melo. I'd rather not take the council's time tonight, but do I need to sign this if I want to come down and talk about it?
Right.
Because I'm concerned about so if I put my name and address on here and write a letter,
Just stop, sign it, and then Glenn will either contact you or you contact Glenn.
okay, thank you.
Correct, Glenn? Okay.
Yep.
Thank you, Jane.
Thank you.
Anyone else have anything?
And yours is 414, you said?
414, yes.
414. Okay, gotcha.
Thank you. Melo, that's correct. Thank you.
Give me yellow. Thank you, Jane. Anyone else care to come in front of this? Hearing no more comments, what's the wishes of the council?
Make a motion to close the public hearing, but just saying this last chance to get a signature in, or...
Second.
Motion on the floor to close the public hearing and seconded by Craig, motioned by John. Any further discussion on that? Hearing none, let's bring it to a vote. That motion passes. Next motion on the floor is that the council adopt the resolution, second series assessment for the project Z49 East Main Street sidewalk replacement with any adjustments deemed appropriate.
I move the resolution.
Motion on the floor been made by John, or by Craig, seconded by David. Any further discussion? John?
Just a comment I want to bring up is city does have a sidewalk fund, and Glenn, maybe ask you to comment on the status of that and how that was either used or not used in various areas, just so people are aware that, was there in the status of it. So.
Right. This is a separate process other than the sidewalk fund, and generally the participation in the 50-50 is greater than the participation in the sidewalk fund. The sidewalk fund has got the same exact participation, except for it's limited to $500 per unit. So it's the same participation in that process, except that one's limited to dollar amount. And one other comment was, in the motion it says with any adjustments deemed appropriate. I assume that is if we come up with a question that we deem appropriate, we'll
That would be
take
my
care of that
understanding,
without
yes.
having it come back. Yep.
Okay. Let's move that to a vote.
Glenn, can you explain that sidewalk fund again?
Yes.
I'm not clear that I picked up on that. So if it's a $500, does that mean that the property owner only pays $500?
No, okay, let's say you have a sidewalk replacement cost that's $250 total. We would pay half of that, $125, from that sidewalk fund. If you have one that costs $2,000, we would pay $500 of that. So it's 50-50 up to a maximum of $500.
So that's if I have a problem in front of my house and it's not part of a full project like this and I need it worked on, and
Yes.
it's $2,000, the city pays $500, I pay $15.
Yep.
Okay, I understand.
And we advertise that in our bulletin every year,
Okay,
so that people should be made aware of that.
thank you.
And just kind of adding to that, in this case, it was 50% with no maximum on it.
That is
just
correct,
For the sidewalk.
for the sidewalk. Yep.
Thank you.
That motion passes, which brings us to agenda number 4, approval of consent agenda. Consent agenda items will soon appear on the screen. Consider approval of personal policy amendment amendment to Appendix B, maximum allowed reimbursements per diem expenses rates for non-local traffic. Approve specifications and authorize for bids for compact four-wheel drive articulated wheel loader for street department. Date change in council regular meeting in 2017. Approve specs for equipment for the amateur sports ball fields. Consider resolution certifying special assessments for hazardous building removal at 104 South 10th Street. Consider renewal of the group long-term disability insurance policy. Consider adoption of resolution adopting assessment for ice and snow removal and for grass and weed control. Consider resolution appointing a responsible authority and assigning duties under the Minnesota Government Data Practices Act. Consider amendments to the data practices policy for data subjects and data practices for policy for members of the public. Consider authorization to declare vehicles as surplus property for the police department. Introduce the attached ordinance to rezone property as described above from R4 higher density multifamily resident district to an I1 limited industrial district at 811 North Bruce Street, and call for a public hearing. And the last one, consider approval of bills and project payments. Is there any item on the consent agenda that the council would like removed for further discussion?
Number 5, 9, 11, and 15.
Okay. 5, 9, 11, and 15. Yeah. Any other ones? Okay.
Make a motion to approve the balance of the items on the consent agenda.
Second. A motion to approve the remaining items of the consent agenda by John and seconded by Craig. Any further discussion on that? Hearing none, all in favor signify by voting. That part of the consent agenda passes. Okay, now. Thirteen is originally number 5, Jane? Okay. Glenn, you had something on that?
The questions, I noticed that we're using the rates from the General Services Administration schedule, and I think that's what a lot of the cities in Minnesota are using. They just adopt whatever the GSA has. One of the concerns I had is that I was looking at the reimbursement rates for the SMSU and a number of the state university systems, and they're lower than our rates. And I'm wondering why our rates would be more than what the university system is paying its employees.
Do they follow the General Services Administration rates?
What's that?
Do they follow the same
they don't.
rates?
They don't.
Well, that would be why. Several years ago, dating back, I believe, to 2009, that is correct, 2009, the City Council established that they wanted to follow the GSA rates, which follows the federal fiscal year, which is why we bring it back in October 1st rather than January 1st of every year. So in mid-September, the GSA adjusts their schedule online. So we go out and we look that up, and then we adjust it accordingly on our appendix. So these rates match the GSA rates, which is just followed along line with what Council's direction has been since 2009.
I guess my concern would be, why is it that the reimbursement rates for the university employees would be less than what it would be for city employees, or the other way around? Why would city employees be reimbursed at a higher rate than the state of Minnesota employees would be?
I don't know what system the university follows.
Well, it's by contract. It's by a contractual agreement. They come to an agreement with the employees on a contract and establish these reimbursement
So by union
rates.
agreements?
It's a union rate. That's
Okay.
correct. And for breakfast, an example, the state of Minnesota employees for the university system here get $9, and our breakfast is $11. Supper is $16 for the university employees, and it's $23 for our employees.
Again, this was directed by council back in 2009. Prior to 2009, staff followed a strict reimbursement policy. So receipts were required, and the employee was reimbursed for the exact expenses. These rates place limits on those expenses that employees can incur.
Sure.
And it provided just a standard way of assessing increases year over year.
Right. And you indicate that the council indicated that they wanted to follow the GSA rates, but the council then could, if they wanted to, deviate from those rates and charge lower rates.
That is true. That is true.
John, you have something to
I'll
add?
just add, relative to the discussion, this, as Larry knows, came before the Personnel Committee, but there are some, these are the rates, but there's also certain conditions that the city does follow, particularly like, say, breakfast, if it's included in the hotel. Why don't you go through maybe
Sure.
just a couple of those items that were discussed in personnel?
When an employee is attending a training, a conference, or a seminar, and a meal is provided at that location, the employee is not permitted to submit for that reimbursement. If the meal is provided, it's provided as part of the conference, and that, whether it's lunch, breakfast, or dinner, that is deducted from their total reimbursement allowance.
And I'm a state of Minnesota employee, and I go with the university rates. And if the breakfast is provided for me, I never charge the university for it either. I never seek reimbursement.
Right. It would be the same with city employees.
Right.
We wouldn't be permitted to submit that for an expense.
And that's a good policy, right?
Yep.
I just want to make one comment on that. When we redid that several years ago, we looked at neighboring communities. I don't remember the towns we looked at, and pretty much those, I think, were following this or within that accordance, and we thought that's why we voted at that time to go with the GSA rating. if I remember correctly.
It was some time ago, so I don't recall the other cities that were using this, but yes, we did a fair
we
amount
did
of
a study on
research
it.
at the time
Yeah.
and determined that this was the route the council wanted to follow.
Along those lines, I did check too, and you are right. The cities basically just go along with the GSA rate all the way down. And, but just because they're doing it that way doesn't mean we have to do it that way either.
That's
If we want to
correct.
save money and we feel like the other rates are adequate to reimburse our employees, we certainly could go with lower rates.
Any further discussion on that? What's the wishes of the council?
I'll make a motion to approve the per diem rates.
Second.
Motion on the table by John, seconded by Craig to approve the rates, GSA rates. Any further discussion?
I just want to note that when the Personnel Committee, we did have a pretty lengthy discussion about this also when we met and recommended the approval to the council, and I think it's been vetted well, and I think it's pretty standard. I know that the only thing that really changed on these rates was in the city of Duluth, and I can tell you that the rates that we're charging are pretty much the rates that the hotels are charging government rate. So it's not like staff are getting any kind of a bonus. If we expect them to go there, I think we should expect to reimburse them the real cost that it costs to attend.
Craig, along those lines, the only thing that we did change was the overnight stay from $89 for a hotel to $91. All the rest of the rates stayed the same.
That's correct.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, let's bring it to a vote. That motion passes. Next item was number 9. Consider resolution certifying special assessments for hazardous building removal at 104 South 10th Street. Glenn, you had something on this?
Well, this is the one where we have an agreement that we're going to assess the property owner for removal of the building from the site. And I guess one of the concerns I had with this one is that this is in compliance with Section 463 of Minnesota statutes. And as I read the statute, it said something to this effect, that the governing body may provide that the cost so assessed may be paid and not to exceed 5 equal annual payments with interest thereon at 8% per annum. And we're not charging 8%. So are we in compliance with the statute, or is the statute supposed to mean something different here? Because I think the rate we're charging is 3.something. 3.31, right?
Dennis, do you have any
Yeah.
comments on that, or Glenn?
Dude.
I think that's the maximums, isn't it?
I think that's,
But does it say maximum of 8%?
it says that except this governing body may provide, cost be assessed, may be paid.
In
not to
5
exceed.
equal,
Yep,
right? And then it says
with
that
interest thereon.
at 8%.
Yep.
So I would want to make sure that we're in compliance with state statute there.
We have an agreement, and if we're not in compliance, we're not collecting enough interest. Shame on me, but we're giving this gentleman the opportunity to pay in full with no interest, or he can pay it over a period of time, 5 years.
Okay.
And
Well, anyway,
he-
that was my concern, that, you know, in the statute, it says 8% per annum, and if that's the requirement of state statute, we'd want to make sure we're complying with that.
We're not.
Any further discussion? What's the wishes of the council?
I move that we approve the resolution of certifying the special assessment for the raising of the hazardous building.
I'll second.
There's a motion on the floor to adopt the resolution for the assessment of 104 South 10th Street, and it's seconded by John. Any further discussion? Hearing none, let's bring it to a vote. That motion passes. The next one was originally number 11. Consider the adoption of resolution adopting assessment for ice and snow removal and for grass and weed control. When you brought this up?
I was looking at this one this afternoon, and as I read the statute, it talks about that unpaid special charges may be special assessments, and one of the items included there is weed elimination. In what we're proposing here, it talks about the grass being too long and talks about weeds. Is it? I don't see anything in the statute that says about special assessments for grass being too long. So is this a situation where it's weeds, or is it grass too long? Or a combination of them?
You asking me? Okay. It would depend upon what the letter was sent out for. It could be either or both. So it could be, it would be dependent upon what the notice said.
Well,
Jane probably has that.
Is this by complaint, Glenn?
It is. It's by complaint, and then we send out a letter that indicates that they have to do it. If they don't do it, we'll do it. And if they don't pay for it, then it goes on specials.
Certainly if the city by ordinance has a rule against grass getting too large, and we indicate that we're going to collect for it, I would assume that the city has the right to collect for mowing the lawn when it gets too long. But this special assessment statute doesn't say anything about grass being too long. It does say about weed elimination. So I'm wondering, can we really use this special assessment process to cover a situation where simply the grass is getting too long?
Our code addresses grass.
What's that?
Our city code addresses grass being removed.
What's that? I am talking about the state statute.
But our city code allows us to special assess.
Well, we're basing that on state statute, I'm assuming. State statute gives us the power to use special assessment to collect it. But I don't see in the state statute it says anything about where grass is too long, you can use the special assessment process. Just because we usually base our ordinances on state statute, and maybe we went too far on that, and maybe we don't have the right to use special assessments to pay for cutting the grass when it gets too long. I think that's something we need to look at. Because like I said, when I look at the statute here, it says weed elimination you can use special assessments for. But it doesn't,
You have a
I
comment?
don't see where we all have a copy of this, yeah.
I can't speak to the statute specifically, but I know it's very common practice for cities to have this procedure where if somebody's grass gets too long, a complaint is made. If they don't do anything about it, I think it's in 10 days they have to do it. The city will go out and mow it, and then they will send them the bill, and if they don't pay the bill, then they get a letter saying that it will be specially assessed. It's a very common practice for cities.
Well, what I'm concerned with then is is it based on statute or just because they're doing it that way? And I think it's something we should look at to see whether or not we're really complying with state statute. Because the state statute does say weed elimination, but doesn't say anything about having the authority to use special assessments. I mean, it lists a number of items here where you can use special assessments. And I assume there's a reason they list all these items. But like I say, there's nothing there about grass getting too long. And so my concern is, is a city code and ordinance in compliance with state statute? Or did we overstep the state statute?
Without checking state statute to be specific, I know the special assessment authority is derived from state statute. It's not something cities just can do on their own. So I'd say would fare the opposite, being it is a very common practice for cities across Minnesota. It would stand to reason without checking into it that if a lot of cities are doing it, it must stand that it must be an allowable practice. Otherwise, we would have seen multiple lawsuits against cities for doing it.
Yeah, I believe that, and again, I don't know specifically about the state statute for special assessment, but I know that it is typical that through the proper process of adopting city code, and where we have a maintenance or else or an action or else clause, and when a public entity has to encumber expense in order to enforce that, we have the ability to be more restrictive than state statute and rule, but not less, as long as we follow the due process. And we have the authority as a public entity rendering that service, the ability to have the means to collect the debt.
If in fact we have that authority, why do we need it in the state statute?
I think the state statute spells out the fact that you have that authority. Why that specifically goes to weeds, I'm not sure.
Well, I guess I would ask the city attorney opinion on that. If the state statute doesn't provide for it, can the city go ahead and use the special assessment process to collect any bills it wants to?
Not any bills that it wants to, but we do have the authority under our code. I'm gonna fall back to our code process. Due process and procedure has been used. And I would recommend that we approve this, and I'll certainly take a look at it.
I'd appreciate it if you'd look at that and just make sure on that, because like I say, it doesn't appear in state statute. Weed elimination is there. Snow removal is there, but there isn't anything about grass being too long. And so I would assume there's a reason that they had those items listed.
Any further comments? What's the wishes of the council?
I'd make a motion to approve the resolution adopting the assessment, and also with the consideration that council review the ordinance relative to state statute.
Motion by John, seconded by David. Any further discussion? Hearing none, let's bring it to a vote. The motion passes. Agenda item number 15, or what was 15? That the council introduce the ordinance to rezone properties described from an R4 higher density with multiple family to District I-1 Industrial Park at 811 North Bruce Street and 813 North Bruce Street.
I just had a quick question. I was at the Planning Commission meeting on this, and I didn't have in front of me all the ordinance here, but I was just curious if I could ask Glenn a question here we're going from R1 to I1 district. Is there a reason it was I1 and not I2 or?
Yes.
R4, yeah, R4 to
Councilmember
I1.
Bierkohler and council. On the screen shows the area we're talking about, and just so, it's probably a good idea to at least let the public know what it is we're discussing here. This is North Bruce Street. Let me see if I can get this to work. This is North Bruce Street, and this is the gas company location. Immediately adjacent to it is a developing residential subdivision, but this facility was there many years ago before annexation, and the annexation took place. Then they, when anything is annexed, it's annexed in as ag. So then it was rezoned at that time to R4, and then it had a conditional use permit for the operation that they had there at that time. And I think it was like an energy shaving operation. That's what it was called at the time. I don't know whether it was, the relationship between gas and electric or what, but this has been used for that facility for some time, even prior to annexation. And then that's where you used to go and pay your gas bill. And that was eliminated as well. The office space was relocated, and you can, I think there's a drop box in front, and I think you can still drop off your bill, but all the bills are sent to North Dakota now. So what they want to do is they want to tear down this part of the building and then expand the storage to the, I'll call it to the northwest. And to do that, we looked at several different options. What sort of zoning would allow that to occur? That's what we kind of look at to start with. And R4 doesn't. It's a industrial operation, and we didn't want to rezone it to a heavy industrial zone. And we don't have a broader shot, but if you can visualize the spot, this is the dike with the bike path on it. And just to the west of this is the street department, and that's also I-1. So we thought, yes, it might look like spot zoning, so did R4 look like spot zoning, but it was the best alternative that we could suggest to allow the continuation of that business there and the addition of that shop storage facility. It includes both this property, that's who's making the request, and then we included this property. It's also a gas company, different ownership. And so we included, right now it's all R4, and this is the petition area, and our recommendation, of course, is to have it all zoned the same.
Question. Glenn, does would the new designation of I-1 have a height restriction on the proposed building to be built, and what would that be?
I would have to check the code, but it's like 75 feet.
So they could build a very tall building that would have some.
Yeah, and we already have the proposal of what they want to build.
Right.
When they came in, they came in kind of ready to build.
Sure.
They'd been talking about for some time, but never had an application. And so their application is a regular industrial-looking shop.
What would
storage building.
What would the height restriction be in R4? 12 feet on the.
Excuse me, he's got it there. We have different restrictions for residential than we do commercial, but R4, you can go 35 feet.
35, okay, all right.
And what is it for the industrial? 75.
Okay, thank you.
So what, Glenn, my question is, that's in an R4 district today.
Yep.
But with the conditional use permit, the usage of these buildings is what's permitted today with the conditional use permit, correct?
Yes. Of those buildings that currently exist. And really, it never did address this building. It only addressed this building at the time. So we're kind of bringing it all in compliance, and it's a permitted use. It's not conditional use, is it? Permitted use in that zone.
Is there equipment and vehicles being stored outside on that property?
They're being stored outside? I'm not aware of any. We've never gotten any complaints. There could be a gas truck there periodically that's stored there. But on an I-1, is there outside storage permitted?
For repair shops, it says no long-term
Yeah,
outside
really,
storage.
the intent is it's not a repair shop. It is a storage facility. Now, they use the materials that are being stored in there to make repairs on valves or meters or something like that.
It's basically a contractor's shop.
Yeah.
Right? The gas companies do some assemblies there and the preparation and storage.
Okay, that answered my question. Thank you.
We didn't believe when he first came in that it was an issue at all until we looked at the zoning map. We thought it was going to be come in, fill out the permit, leave with the permit, start construction. But, of course, nothing is simple.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, what's the wishes of the council?
I move the recommendation to introduce the ordinance to rezone the properties described below, and I think that's puts it to a public hearing then, next move, correct? Yep.
Motion on the floor, is there a second?
Second.
Second, motion by Craig, seconded by John. Any further discussion? Hearing none, bring it to a vote, Jane. The motion passes.
Call for a public hearing? Yeah.
Oh. It was all the same motion? No.
Make a motion to call for the public hearing to rezone the property.
Second.
Okay, the motion on the floor to call for a public hearing by John, seconded by David. We just do a voice vote on that, Jane?
Did you join?
There you go. Okay, that passes. Now, get back on track here, shall we? Number 17, Knieff edition, introduction of the preliminary plat and call for a public hearing versus the council introduce a preliminary plat of Knieff edition. Will you, Glenn?
Yes. Okay. This proposed subdivision, this is Canoga Park Drive. Act is off to the northwest of this, and this is generally a residential subdivision area. These two lots are included in Wilkie Miller Busing's second edition, lots 3 and 4. Lots 3 and 4. Mr. Knieff bought both of these lots and has constructed a single-family home on these lots. He'd like to square off his property a little better and is proposing to add this triangular piece to the south. The issue with that is that's a meets and bounds description property, including a very large parcel. So he just is looking at purchasing this piece of property and adding it to these two and re-subdividing it, so this is one lot altogether, lot 1, block 1 of Knieff addition. it's kind of a real technical process here that Dennis could probably explain better than I, but I'll put it this way. In order to do this, this piece of property has to be split from the other larger parcel. In order to make that split, we notice, of course, that there is no public access to that triangular piece of property. Okay, there's no public access to it. So there's a step-by-step process. First of all, you split this, and then all the taxes have to be paid on this whole piece of property going south of there in order for that split to be approved. Then you approve the split, then you transfer the property so that it's all one owner, and making sure that all of the taxes are paid on these and this one, and then you combine these two, and then you have the sole owner of this property sign the plat that is the one lot subdivision. We've also talked to the owner about, there is an existing utility easement that comes along the backside of his existing lots. And he said, I'm okay with that. It doesn't have to be vacated. I don't intend to ever build over it. I intend to put another storage building on this triangular piece of property, and I'm okay with it. However, before the hearing, before it comes back to you, I have talked to the utility companies, and I will talk to them again concerning if there is nothing in that existing one, and we have dedicated easements around it, that I will recommend that it be eliminated. There's no use having that utility easement there if there aren't any existing utilities in there. Doesn't make sense. So before the hearing and before the final plat is submitted, we'll take care of that issue. Dennis, is there anything that I missed here?
You did explain the split and the real estate tax payment. The split and the tax payment is a requirement of the state. The platting requirement requires that all of the current taxes be paid as well. So, and we have, it's my understanding, verified through our assessor's office that all of the taxes have been paid for the split property and for the other properties. And so I think we're pretty much falling into place for everything to happen simultaneously.
We make sure that his recording, he takes care of all the recording, and this is the process, so when he goes over to the county office, they understand, yes, 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 yes.
And we understand already that lots 3 and 4 have been combined into one parcel. The county is reluctant to give up tax parcel numbers for some reason. Once you create a tax parcel number, it pretty much stays around forever. And so we'll be having really 3 parcels, which will just have one number when we're all done for tax purposes. And Mr. Knieff has been very cooperative with this process and understands it as well.
I move the introduction of the preliminary plat of the Knieff edition.
Motion on the floor by Craig, seconded by David to introduce the preliminary plat of Knieff edition. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll bring that to a vote. That motion passes. Motion number 2, the council call for the public hearing of preliminary plat of Knieff edition to be held October 11th.
I'll make a motion to call for the public hearing.
Second.
Motion on the floor by John, seconded by Craig to call for the public hearing. Any further discussion? Hearing none, let's bring it to a vote. And that motion passes. Item number 18, consider a 3-year agreement with Pyrotechnic Display Incorporated for the City of Marshall July 4th fireworks. For some reason, Scott, I think you must have this. Welcome.
I was just coming up to see you, Larry.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Thank you, Councilman Doom. Essentially, what you have in front of you is an opportunity to renew a contract that we've had for about the past 7 years with Pyrotechnic Display. They have the fireworks contract that we utilize on the 4th of July. We had an early opportunity to renew with them. Would be for another, another 3 years. Essentially, it's about a 15% increase, but we are locked into that price during the 3-year term. So we think it's an excellent opportunity to take advantage of this at this time.
Any questions from the council? David?
Question, Scott, do we have an idea why such a big increase? Did they spell that out for us?
Yeah, essentially, the discussion is that it would average out to about 4.5% to 4.8% over the 3-year period.
And I know you're new here. Do you know if there's been a similar history of increases in the past?
I do not know that.
Okay. Thank you.
Any further questions? What's the wishes of the council?
I move to approve the 3-year agreement with Pyrotechnic Display.
I'll second.
Motion on the floor by Craig, seconded by John. Any further discussion from the council?
Just, this is something, living that close, try to attend all the time. There's a lot of people out there that watch this. I think it's very well attended and seem to be very well enjoyed by many. So I'm in favor of continuing on with the fireworks.
It's part of our community.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, let's bring it to a vote, Jane. That motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 19, Southwest Minnesota Regional Amateur Sports Center, consider change order number 3 for contract doors, frames, and hardware with Builder Supply. Len?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. I'm going to handle both of these at the same time for discussion purposes. And these are the continuation of other change orders that we have reviewed and approved. And specifically, these two are also included in the change order summary schedule that we've been reviewing with Wenk over the last several weeks. And maybe Dennis wants to expand on this a little bit. These will be included in that discussion and come back to council for recommendations for what we call responsibility. It's just a summary of architectural contract ads, city requested code required changes, and we have completed our review of them. The summary is back in Wenk's office for a final summary to us, and then we will be scheduling a meeting with the appropriate parties, and then it will come to council after that. So, Dennis, maybe a couple of comments.
It starts with the list that what I refer to as causation. Why have we had some of these changes? Owner directed, we wanted the enhancements in the club room, the concession room, those types of things. There have been significant owner directed changes. There's some architectural coordination issues. There's some construction manager has brought to our attention various issues. And then there are code-driven required changes. And as always, especially when you get into the dirt work, there's unforeseen circumstances. And then the concrete delamination issue, the rubber tiling, it just happened. But ultimately, the city has paid the price, has paid to date $586,000 worth of change orders. Now, there's a causation, but then there's a responsible party. And that's what we're trying to sort out, who ultimately should be responsible for the payment of some of those matters. Whether it's code-driven, now is that a requirement of a new code change that the city will be able to take advantage of and we should have paid for it anyway? So is that city responsibility, or is it something that was missed in the architectural design and the responsible party lies elsewhere? That's what's being sorted out right now. But ultimately, the biggest driver so far that we can determine is city requested changes. We have enhanced the exposition area, additional electrical hookups and speaker systems. The sound systems have been changed. Club room changes, concession room changes. And also we have determined that so far we've received, the additional lighting for the biplane, additional signage lighting. Schwann's picked up half of those additional costs. That's about $8,000 they have already paid. Of that $586,000, it still shows as an additional change order $32,000 related to the floor issue. But that will show as a deduct on the final payment to that contractor. So there will be another $32,000 coming off of that. So we're down to about $540,000 of changes, once we add some of those things back in. And then so far, I think we're about a little over $100,000 that we will be discussing with the architect.
Plus that 32,000, Dennis?
Mm-hmm.
Plus the 32, yes. And we're trying to determine that internally. How do we want to do this? Do we want to have a work session? Do you want the printout of all 108 change orders that were requested, some not submitted for approval, some approved, or do you just want a summary? Electrical enhancements, tile on the floor, additional dirt work. It's an unforeseen circumstance. That adds about $71,000 already to the change order.
And I think the summary that we're getting from Wenk has all the change orders involved, and it would be good if you saw all of those. So, and each of them has a heading of where we think the responsibilities are. So I think that summary, it's not that difficult. It's not real lengthy, even though there's 100 plus. They're
29 pages lengthy
Yeah,
so far.
But
it does include, $158,000 of LED lighting changes that was rejected, that was not submitted.
Right.
But it's something to look at in the future. But going in, that's a big cost.
What I would like to see, of those change orders, a lot of those change orders were called for by, say, for example, the scoreboard by Avera said, we're going to give you a $2 million donation, but in turn, that will include an enhanced scoreboard. So to do that, we had to do some different wiring and speaker systems and everything. I would like to see what those enhancements cost in a change order, but those were dictated by a sponsor that said, we're going to do this, but in turn, we want this. When you start bringing those things out, all of a sudden, you don't have $600,000 in change orders as far as building change orders of things that we did not, design correctly. Now, some of the things in there, yes, we changed as we went along, but I think those were enhancements that we thought would be for the betterment long-term of the building, and also things. But I would like to see some of those, if possible, redlined or, so we can make some decisions in that.
that's what
Right.
we have.
Yeah, and I think some of the other ones I know too that, we discussed that there were, option A and option B, there were parallel but separate paths that we could take for other enhancements that we had talked about when we were approving original design plans and initiating construction. And then the decisions were going to be based on the performance of the local option taxes to see where the volumes were and how our budget was if we had room to do some of those other enhancements. And I think those were also some of the change orders that were driven by staff, but it was things that we had also talked about. So I appreciate that, Glenn, and I look forward to looking through those pages, and I appreciate you guys following through and doing the due diligence to really look that over so that we know when we're finished, we have a good accounting of exactly what happened and why, and looking at the responsibilities. And I think that's very important, and I appreciate all that effort.
We've gotten to the point where we have looked at change orders. A change order for 7 additional electrical outlets required, of which 4 of the 7 we said are city requirements for vending. 3, however, are architectural. I mean, it's got to that point.
Yep.
Yeah, so it's, yeah.
No, I like specifically on this one, the first one that we're looking at is for doors, frames, and hardware, and that's part of our, for our occupational capacity, correct?
Yes.
Okay, David?
Just, I'll call it an umbrella question, Glenn or Dennis. Are there any more change orders that we can reasonably anticipate that haven't been submitted yet?
Yes.
Okay, do we have an idea approximately how many?
No, but not significant dollar amounts.
No.
Or
It's a lot related to
Not in the-
punch list items.
Right.
too.
okay, then an idea of about how long or how quickly that submittal process will take?
The drop-dead date for concluding all punch list items is September 16th. That date has come and gone.
Yes,
The
it
punch
has.
list is not yet completed, so
Very soon then.
very soon. yeah.
Thank you.
And I want to clarify the one that Councilmember Schaefer indicated, the door in this one that we're talking about is an exiting door to the mechanical room in the back. It was a different type of hardware system that you had it was emergency exiting, and it was facing the wrong way and had to be a different type of hardware. That's what this one is. I'll talk about the other one that he's talking about later on in the meeting.
Door hardware.
Yeah.
Here several times.
It was an exit device on the exterior of the door rather than on the interior of the door. Yep.
Does that make it an entrance device?
Yeah, kind of.
And again, Glenn,
Emergency.
we
get in.
need to approve this to
Yep.
get the contractor paid in when it's all said and done. This will be one of those things that will come back and we'll say, that's not our responsibility, that should have been caught up front.
It will be.
Okay.
And I'll look at the second one too. What's the second one?
I think it's on the same low voltage.
I
Make a
move-
motion to approve the change order number 3.
Second.
Is a motion on the floor to approve change order number 3. Any further discussion on that one? Hearing none, let's bring it to a vote. Jane? That motion passes. Motion number 2. Glenn, do you have any comments on that?
I'm just looking at it.
Okay, sorry.
Yes, I do. This is the electrical room that originally had ventilation in the room on the original project. However, the systems were relocated within the building, within that room, and there ended up being no ventilation in it. And so the ventilation was relocated to the sidewall instead of out the roof. And that's what this is for. It's for relocation of ventilation that was originally included and relocated. The reason we have to have it, it gets awfully hot in there.
Is this the room down in the lower level where all of the electronics
Yeah,
is?
yep. And you couldn't, they also wanted to put it in one location, they couldn't put it there because it was too close to the electrical system. So it had to be relocated. It never got installed, and they noticed it was too close, and now it's been relocated again. Never constructed yet, but now that's what this is for.
Now, this room contains a whole bunch of our computer controls, hard drives, and all that. Now, this is a ventilation system, but not a cooling system,
That is
correct?
correct. It's ventilation only, temperature generated,
Okay.
exhaust.
And will this be able to maintain that room at like a sub 82 degree temperature?
It was-
Because, I mean, that's kind of the critical temp, right?
Yeah, I'm sure it has a temperature control that keeps it ventilating until that temperature is reached.
And our option, if this doesn't work, then we're going to have to look at
Air
a
conditioning
air
unit.
conditioning unit in the room, correct? I
Yeah.
mean, we went through the same thing at
Yep.
my office space, that
Yep.
we couldn't keep the server room cool, and we ended up having to put a Mitsubishi unit in there in order to get it cool.
If you remember City Hall a few years ago, we had the computer stuff in the basement in a closed room without ventilation. It got too hot there. We had to add ventilation, but in that case, the ventilation alone took care of it.
Okay. And again, Glenn, this is one of those items when we come down to that final list where we're going to argue about
Yes,
whose
it is.
responsibility this is.
Yep,
And we need to,
we've already included that in that list.
yeah.
The use of this room was pretty clear on the initial design when we were
Yes.
laying out what we needed, correct?
Correct. Yep.
Make a motion to approve change order number 14.
Motion on the floor, is there a second?
Second.
Motion by John, seconded by Craig for motion number 14. Any further discussion? Hearing none, can we bring it to a vote, Jane, please? That motion passes. Next item. Conversion Channel Bike and Trail Project, Vernon Channel through 19. Consider resolution approving plans and specs and authorize advertisement for bids. Euclid?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Doolin and Council. I wish the mayor was here tonight because he's been.
You're not alone there.
He's no, doing a good job. This has been waiting for some time. We've been working on getting an alignment that seemed to fit out there. This is the proposed bike path location, the black line. This is the golf course. This is the golf course. This is Highway 19. Burlington Northern Railroad tracks running through here. And we had several iterations of design of this bike trail. The blue was one of the iterations, but the black one now is the one that's been designed. It's gone through several reviews by MnDOT. It's gone through many reviews by the Burlington Northern, and we've got the head nod that that's the one that we're going with. So what we've got is a set of plans. They're complete in this location, other than final permits by everyone involved. That means BN, MnDOT, a review by DNR, a review by Corps of Engineers, but all of them have been involved with this specific location and this specific design for some time. So we are recommending approval of the project and authorizing the advertisement for bids, and we will not be advertising until we get the okay from the respective agencies. I will mention, and in the memo, there's a note of an estimate of $65,000 for the railroad to do their improvements within their own right-of-way. That's always the best way to do it. We don't want our contractors working within the right-of-way. The issues that we have with safety and the roadmaster being there during construction. So what we do is we actually ultimately will get a price from them to do essentially everything within the right-of-way. So we would recommend approving the plans and specs and authorizing our advertisement. We don't expect to be doing work on the job this fall. And it has to be complete by June 30 of next year for the grant. That we're working on the county's legacy grant for this project.
Question, Glenn, you think that June 30th date will work? You're
It
confident
has
about
to work.
Well, I know it has to, but
Yeah.
you see that as realistic and manageable?
Yeah, I do.
Okay,
It's not that long a project, but
fairly simple.
it's fairly simple, but it's complicated because of the entities involved.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, I know this is a project that's been going on for many, many years, and there's a lot of different operations, governmental and entities involved in this. But this should be the final leg of this, which should connect that entire bike trail, and which would be a great addition to the city of Marshall and the county. What are the wishes of the council?
Make a motion to approve the resolution.
Motion on the floor by John. Is there a second? David seconded that. Any further discussion? Hearing none, can you bring it to a vote, Jane, please? And that motion passes. Next item is Commissioner Board Liaison Reports. Craig, do you want to start?
Had a meeting with the Transit Committee a week and a half ago, and one of the conversations is that we have a requirement to do some more improvements on a couple more of the bus stop locations with shelters, and so one of the items that I've discussed a little bit with the mayor on the side, and that I will probably be bringing forth at least to Glenn and the street department and possibly the parks department, is when we have these bus stops located, we typically ask the property owner to do the maintenance along with the sidewalk. But one of the things that I'm thinking about is that we typically plow the majority of our streets, almost all of them, both directions. So both sides have a pile of snow in there. And it's one thing to clean the sidewalk and probably even clean out the bus stop, but I think we need to develop a policy and a priority to work with the Marshall Area Transit that possibly we can use. We have the sidewalk blowers, maybe the articulating loader with a front end blower that we clean out the approach path for the bus also. So that's about the only thing that I really have that came out of that I think is real pertinent to the city. But I think we should be looking forward to that. Our bus routes are getting quite a bit of use, and they're becoming more popular with the SMSU students, and I think that ridership is getting better. People are relying on that a lot more, and I'm glad that we pay a lot of attention to that. So I think we may need to make sure that we keep an enhanced and safe set of stops so that people can continue to utilize that. And that's really all I have.
Okay, thank you, Craig. I'm going to go in order, Glenn, so I'll take mine next. Convention and Visitors Bureau met last week one day. Next year we have the pheasants, or the governor's pheasant shoot will be in southwest Minnesota again, out of the Marsh area. Pheasants Forever has their banquet coming up at R8 or at the Sports Center. The first hockey tournament is scheduled to be there November 6th. So we need to get the ice on and get geared up and get concessions, et cetera, all ready to go for that. I'm doing this from memory, so this is kind of scary.
I will wait.
I think that's probably about where that one's going to end at. Personnel met, and we acted on that tonight. Equipment review met, and we went over all the specs for the different pieces of equipment that are projected to be needed, and those will be coming forth for our recommendation at a later council meeting. Okay, Glenn, I'm done.
The two items discussed at the Planning Commission were also discussed at the meeting tonight already, so I have nothing else to report.
Thanks, Glenn. John?
EDA did meet and went through our strategic plan for the year and completed that discussion, as well as discussion on the item that we council had passed previous, which was the hotel study. So we went in some depth on discussion on that. Utilities Commission meets tomorrow night, but just if you get a chance out on really out on YouTube, there are two of the programs that Elaine Conyers puts on regarding utilities. One is review of the Sandness well field, going through and showing just kind of a wrap up of where that's at and discussion by Water Department on what's going on there, or what did happen, and as well as MMU year in review. There's another YouTube video out there on that they did a show of kind of it's an effort by the utility company or the Marshall Utilities to get more of the information out to the public in a little bit more of a, I guess, updated fashion as far as showing actually what's going on, and especially the year in review is an interesting one, showing the projects and the progress that was made in areas where either lines were taken down, work was done on tiling and things. So they are interesting. They're about 20 minutes long in each one, so if you get a chance, take a look at it. Ways and Means did not meet. So, thank you, John. David?
The Police Advisory Board met last week to approve more steps in the hiring procedure of filling the next part-time vacancy. Glenn, might I ask, are we planning on an airport commission meeting on October 4?
We are.
Okay, I can plan on that. Good, thank you. That's all.
Okay, thank you, David. That will end. Next item, councilman individual items. Craig?
None, Your Honor.
Glenn?
I was looking at the handbook for the League of Minnesota Cities, and it has some paragraphs that deal with the item we were talking about tonight about weed elimination from streets and private property. And according to the handbook, there is a distinction between statutory cities and charter cities, and I assume that we're a charter city, right? And one of the paragraphs at the bottom here, it said that unpaid charges collected as special assessments are subject to the same notice, hearing, and appeal requirements as any other special assessments. And so the question is, have we met the notice, hearing, and appeal requirements for that?
As far as I know. As far as I know.
For the weeds and the grass and the snow removal, all those requirements have been met?
Yep. I believe so.
Earlier this evening, you had asked that I look at that. We'll certainly take a look and see that our procedures comply
Right.
with it. Okay.
But the special assessment we were talking about is the sidewalks. That's not what I'm talking about here. I mean, we did go through a hearing process with the sidewalks. Did we go through that same hearing process with the weeds and the grass and the snow removal?
I'll tell you the process that we used. We receive a complaint. We give notice to, we get a complaint. We send the person out to make an inspection to see if it's thistles or too tall grass. They come back to the clerk's office. A letter is sent out to the registered property owner, giving him so long a time to take care of the problem. If they don't take care of the problem, we do another inspection. Make sure that it's done or hasn't been done. If it hasn't been done, we contact a contracted service to take care of it. We don't do it ourselves just because we don't want to be charging for our services for something that could be special assessments. So then the work is done. We receive a bill. We send the bill notice to the property owner of the bill, and I think, is there an administrative fee too on there? With an administrative fee according to our rates and fee schedule. If they don't pay it, it says right on the notice, if you don't pay it within a certain length of time, it will be placed on your special assessment. So those are probably the notices they get to pay it, and notification that if they don't pay it, it'll go on special assessments. So the process, that's the process that we use, and I think that's what Dennis is saying, that he'll take a look at. It's
Right.
a very lengthy and time-consuming process to take care of these, what some might consider minor issues, but
Right.
the neighborhood doesn't think they're minor.
Dennis, you'll follow up on that?
Yes, I will, but I am wondering if when do we have to certify these to the county? You know, we have not had a public hearing on this. We may very well need to notice a public hearing, but I know isn't like October, is it November 1?
November 30th.
Okay, we'll take a look at it. We may still need to have a
Okay.
public hearing.
And I just want to make sure that we're complying with all the requirements of the law, and it be something worth looking into, and I appreciate you checking that.
Nothing.
David?
Met last Friday with connection with Marshall Area Transportation Group, having a meeting with MnDOT District 8 officials visiting here in Marshall about just catching up on Highway 23 issues and some discussion about developing some future agenda items. So we'll have more information for you about that in coming months.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to staff reports. Nick, do you would be first?
Thank you. We had a good meeting with Chartwells and Reinhardt regarding the concessionaire in the Arena and Expo, and that went very well. We had representatives from both Chartwells and Reinhardt's there, and they went through the entire concessionary and figured out where the items would go, and there were some adjustments to the equipment list as a result of that. So that was a very fruitful process that came of it. So we'll be seeing that coming back to council at the next meeting, I'm anticipating. Upcoming, we have a budget workshop on October 6th. We'll go over the Public Works, Administration, and Public Safety budgets, and then we will also be discussing the wastewater and storm, the surface water fees. And then the next budget workshop after that will be October 11th. Then we'll plan to adopt the wastewater and storm fees and also review the 5-year capital improvement plan. We're also planning on city staff, along with Ron Helgerson, are looking to do a walkthrough of the Marshall Hotel. We do have the structural report that was given to the city that was received dated June 20th of 2012, but it did not specifically state whether the building is structurally sound or not. It says that it is not a danger to the adjacent buildings, but the verbiage is not in there that says it is structurally sound. So we're going to take a walkthrough of that building to get it updated, since it's been 4 years since that report came out. Take a look at it once more to see what condition it's in currently. That is all I have.
Okay, thank you. Len?
Couple of things. I mentioned that I was going to talk about a doorway at the sports center. You've all been there, and when you come in the main doors, you go towards Rink 1. And when you go towards Rink 1, there's 2 doors in that wall. And when this building was designed, it was designed for ice sheets and expo center. Since that time, it was reviewed to be done for some things greater than that, like concerts. And in looking at it, additional seating, additional occupancy would require a 3rd door in that glass wall. And it's not minor. It would add the availability of 350 seats in that expo space for that type of use. And I did get a price to do that, not involved with the existing contracts, but separate from that. So there aren't any add-ons or percentage fees or things like that. We'd be monitoring it. For $8,750 to modify the center of that wall to add another door in the center of it. And that would then allow 350 additional seats in that space. So I reviewed it with Scott from Community Services. I reviewed it with our staff and Preston and his staff. And for $25 a seat, I think it's awfully worthwhile. So I would recommend that we proceed with the development of a third door. I got the prices from Robert L. Carr Company and Southwest Glass, local contractors to do the work. So it's not an error and omission, it's an addendum for additional use of the facility. Without it, we are limited to 800 people in Rink 1. And we'd add about 350 to that, so it'd be about 1,150 allowed in Rink 1. Any comments, or? I think it should be done for that price.
We never, I recall being pitched concerts when we were first discussing.
It was never addressed in the original design.
Okay.
And I verified that as well.
Okay.
So then, we were not in compliance at Sounds of Summer?
We are. We were, for the total occupancy of the entire building is 1,300. So being we had events going on in both locations, we were fine. Over 1,000.
Iliad's left the building.
And it's important. I mean, it's important for us to understand that there are occupancy loads, like for the club room. You can only have so many people in there. You can have only so many people in each one of these 2 rink areas. You can have only so many people in the entire building. And the occupancy is based upon whether you have the bleachers extended or not extended. It depends upon how people enter the building, and if you have an emergency, how do they exit the building? You might have plenty of exiting, but 50% of the people who enter a building are looking to get out the same way they came in. And so that's the relationship of the spaces. We haven't put occupancy ratings on the bathrooms yet, but that's coming too, you know. We'll get there someday. You know, it's but. So anyway, it is a significant increase of allowable occupancy by adding 1 door. Now, it's not easy to do that. You've got the glass wall and you've got the metal partitions between them. And then when you take it out next to the floor, you know the issues that we've got with the floor. I mean, you're going to have to sand that down, get it smooth, and then you're not going to seal it the same as the rest. So we'll probably be putting in a little trim strip on the bottom to take care of that look. But I'm sure that we're up to the challenge for figuring out how to do the doorway floor going through the door.
Is there a market for the current door? Can we sell that somewhere?
There's not a current door there. It's a glass wall. So.
Can't sell the wall?
No.
Donald won't buy it for the
We'll
board?
probably keep it for spare. Okay, so I don't think, I wasn't looking for authorization. I was looking for discussion and whether or not I shouldn't go forward with it. Okay. And then another minor project that we've got coming up is, if you know the Brow Brothers drainage area behind there, between that and the Mosh storage building, there's significant drainage issues and erosion going on back there. There's cattails that's been cleaned out once, it's sloughed in again. Moshes are losing the dirt underneath their concrete slab, and they want to do an improvement to that area. We have plans and specs put together for it, and 3 property owners, other than the city, to participate with that. The total project cost is about $48,000 to put in grading, riprap, piping to get the water from existing cars slab to the highway ditch, with each one paying a relative share of the project. And we're sending out letters to each one of them agreeing to the dollar amount up front, with no ability to protest what that assessment would be. And then we'll ask for prices, and if the project comes in less than that, we'll reduce the assessment amount after completion. The city has a significant contribution, well, it's significant to me, $11,000 out of 48,000. But we have drainage coming from Southview. There's 2 catch basins on Southview that discharge to private property. And there is no easement for that discharge. It was just built that way, okay? So we're taking some responsibility for a portion of the work as well. So this was more information than anything else. We'll be working on agreements from, the Moshes have already approved it. James Carr has already taken this for under consideration, because I think he still has some part of the Brow Brothers building area. So I expect it to be approved. I also gave him the opportunity. I said, you could be one of the contractors and you can control the cost of the project and reduce the cost in half if you want to, by just giving us a low bid. And he kind of laughed at me too and said, yeah, it looks like your prices are about what they should be. So that's for FYI. It probably will be an assessment by agreement, that we bypass all the other issues.
How significant are the cattails?
They are
Army
not.
Corps of Engineers significant?
No, they are not.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, they were all removed just a couple of years ago and regraded. And then Mosh has hauled a bunch of fill up on top and leveled out the site and blocked a third of the drainage. So they knew it was a problem, but now we have to take care of it.
So the area that we're actually modifying, that's public, that's our waterway, or?
It is a waterway for the discharge for partial city right-of-way with no channel for getting it to the highway ditch.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. And this will establish that. That's all I have today.
Thank you, Glenn. Any questions for Glenn?
Projects are coming right along. Boy, 2nd Street, they're putting in curb and gutter and water and sewer, and the parking lot out by the ball field parking lot, lots of curb and gutter going in. They'll essentially be curb and guttered by tomorrow. So lots of progress.
Dennis?
Just briefly, just more sponsorship contract review. Hopefully we'll have those wrapped up and be breaking them back. And I was, as Nick said earlier, it's my understanding the concession area has been reconfigured and we will be getting a new equipment list from Reinhardt's. That agreement's pretty much ready to go, but we want to make sure we get the right equipment for the right concession configuration. So we're getting close.
Dennis, I do have that updated equipment list. Would you like me to send that to you?
Yes. Everyone had a chance to look at the pending agenda items?
By the way, I did find a court case, and it's the city of Rochester, and it involves mowing tall grass and eradicating weeds. And it deals with the hearing process. So it'd be something we should maybe look at.
Any questions, any information items? Any questions on upcoming meetings? Before we move to item number 29, I'd like to thank all the fellow council members for putting up with me tonight and staff for bearing with me. It hasn't been easy. My jerky motion. Let's move to item number 29.
Larry, I think that poses a solution.
Move on to item number 29. Schaefer, that'd be yours.
Maybe I want to vote no. I move we adjourn.
Motion by Craig, seconded by
You can
David.
still vote no.
That to a vote. That motion passes. We are adjourned.
Now you get to bring them out.